Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the CEO of Addo AI, Dr. Ayesha Khanna.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to start this session by thinking about seeking opportunities in today's digital society. And it is my great honor to invite our first speaker, His Excellency Abdullah Al-Swaha, Minister of Communication and Information Technology.
Doctor?
Don't. Your Excellency, the whole day today, we have been speaking about trends for the global economy. But what is really next for Saudi?
Thank you, Dr. Ayesha. And it's an absolute pleasure here to connect with the global investors and the innovators. This is an absolute pleasure for me to share with you an update on what's happening under Vision 2030. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform a nation, a region, and the globe. What Vision 2030, if you ask me, is solving for, it's solving predominantly for one thing in the past couple of years. It's the multiplier effect, socially and economically, fueled by three things: our leadership, our youth, and our technology. And speaking about technology, and that's the sweet spot for me, it has been a phenomenal story. And I have to thank here the global innovators and the investors, because you've done my job much easier when I started in 2017. And I'll share with you a story. So in 2017, you've connected with me and with my boss, His Royal Highness, and you said it's absolutely not acceptable for the 18th largest economy not to be top 20, top 30 in everything that we do, including our digital economy. At that time, we were ranking in internet speed, for example, 105. So that gave me the ammunition to go back to my boss, and I said to him, boss, I have a 3-year plan to get to top 30, to make sure I have 2 asks. And he said to me, because His Royal Highness always thinks big and specific, what would it take to cut it down to 2 years? And I said, I need 2 things. First of all, for you to approve for me a digital stimulus package, how we could accelerate rollout of fiber and 5G. And secondly, you need to help me with one minister. He keeps holding up the spectrum for me. According to the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, that is spectrum that should be for the internet economy. And he said to me, who's that minister? And I said to him, Your Highness, don't get upset, but that minister is you, sir, as the Minister of Defense. And he said to me, immediately on the spot, he created a committee. That shows you the courage and the speed of execution and the capacity of being decisive. Within 3 days, we had a committee with everybody, and then within 3 days, fast forward to today, Saudi became the 2nd largest nation as part of the G20 in spectrum allocation, just short of Japan. This is phenomenal. This is rate of execution and speed that we're very proud of. Fast forward to the digital economy, we've jumped from 105 to being 25 today in internet speed. We're the 13th largest global digital economy, and also we are the 3rd largest 5G deployment today globally.
Wow. And I think that's really impressive is today's competitive advantage is really in speed and agility. And it's phenomenal and remarkable that you were able to achieve this with such speedy execution. What about this vision for all of society? How do you digitize and have an inclusive vision for all segments of society?
The multiplier effect socially is something very close to my heart. And I'll share with you an update about a story that I shared with you last year on this particular stage. So the healthcare system globally is broken, and that's why we need to build a parallel universe with digital health, how we are delivering disruptive business models to deliver healthcare anywhere, anytime, securely and reliably. What we managed to do last year was to deploy an app called Siha, My Health. We have transformed every smartphone device as a virtual consultation platform, and so far we have delivered 500,000 consultations. We've dropped the cost of healthcare from $100 to $30. This year, through the acquisition of Babylon Health, we were able to take this to the next level. So with 5G, cloud, and artificial intelligence, we were able right now to deliver virtual consultations delivered by not only man, but machine. And we were able to drop that cost, in some cases on an experimental fashion, to $1. This year, we're taking it to a wholly new level. And you can see some of these solutions in the pavilion and in the exhibition. We were able with 5G, as we dropped down the latency to a single second and being able to deliver virtual reality and augmented reality from every smartphone to deliver healthcare by redefining engagement. Because what virtual reality with spatial computing can do can deliver new levels of engagement and closeness that defies distance. You are able to increase the intensity of the interaction. You are able to increase the diversity and the frequency. So if we could imagine that this smartphone, thanks to 5G, artificial intelligence, and VR, can turn into a VR machine with spatial computing, I could put on my VR headset and you would put yours, and you would be a surgeon from Tokyo or from Singapore, and you could be coaching me as a surgeon here how to prepare. As a physician, you could consult me as a patient to identify where my pain areas are, so we take the diagnosis and the prognosis to the next level. And something that is really close to my heart, VR was able, in collaboration with Magic Leap and the University of Southern California, with some expert, we were able to experiment how we could address cases with people with disabilities, such as autism. 1 out of 160 kids are born with autism, and one of the biggest challenges to get them into the workplace is that first interview. As a matter of fact, 80% unemployment is among folks with autism, and what virtual reality can do is really simulate a virtual interview with a virtual human to ease that process. The results has been remarkable, and this is going to change everything. Think about education. Spatial computing, again, can help kids play around with the solar system, and that would increase both retention and deep learning. This is going to transform everything.
I think what's really powerful in what you're saying is that it's a human-centered approach, and inclusion is at the core of it. This is one of the mistakes that some countries make, is not including everyone. And yet, just in this conversation, you've named about 4 different segments of the population. So the vision is there, the will to execute is there. Why is this the right time for investors to come to Saudi Arabia?
So while these stories are nice and create ambition and give us thrills and excitement about moving forward, when I go back to my early days in the private sector, I can relate to some of the investors and the innovators. You're looking for the hard facts and the figures, and I'm not going to share with you mine. I'm going to share with you the hard facts and the figures from the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Economic Forum. So IMF has released a report that says by 2024, 20 economies are going to contribute 78% of the global growth, Saudi being one of them. Secondly, when you're talking to the World Bank, the Ease of Doing Business report was just released, and they named top 20 nations in terms of reform, and Saudi ranked #1. And last but not least, if you talk to the World Economic Forum, the Global Competitive Index record a leapfrog in terms of ICT transformation, and once again, that's down to Saudi. So if you ask me, if the first FII send a message loud and clear to our investors that Saudi is open for business. Last year's FII sent a message that we're open for culture and entertainment, and this year and years to come, we're open for innovation.
That's wonderful. I think with the speed, the vision, the execution, and the numbers to prove it, now Saudi is the right place for innovation, and it's an exciting era for everyone to join.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'd like to invite everybody to thank Your Excellency for his time today and for his insightful comments. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm now excited to come to our next speaker to speak about the interconnected outlook in the digital economy. I'd like to welcome Mr. Anand Mahindra, Chairman, Mahindra Group, India. Welcome. Mr. Mahindra, I think everybody wants to know from you, given the breadth of your investments, what are the most exciting opportunities for global investors today?
Ayesha, the world has changed in a very significant way for investors. My perception is that there's a new trajectory of value creation. And they're sort of contrary. There are two different ends of the pole. On the one hand, you have a disaggregation of investment opportunities, and then you have a consolidation opportunity. And let me explain that. What I'm trying to say is that if you look at startup entrepreneurs today, what they're doing is to disaggregate opportunities. They unbundle things. They create disruption by breaking up industries, opportunities. And that's where investors have to focus and have been focusing. But on the other hand, the trajectory is towards consolidation. Eventually, a lot of these startups monetize by selling out to bigger competitors. And those bigger, more established players are consolidating. We've just seen yesterday and this morning about Fiat and PSA. So in a sense, investors of today have to have dual vision. They have to be able to discern opportunities at the disaggregated level with the startup, the proliferation, the frenzy, the madness of startups, but they should not take their eye off the enormous value creation that's going to come when larger, more mature industries consolidate. So that's a broad kind of perception that I have.
But that's interesting because it's kind of counterintuitive, and in the media it kind of implies the opposite, but you're right. Actually, the opportunity may be in the big players.
Absolutely.
And in which sectors in particular are you seeing the greatest growth and opportunity?
Well, I actually think you have to look at what's not trending. In today's world, given social media and the millennial outlook, people seem to look at just one thing on their screen, and that's what's gone viral, what's trending today. And obviously, one of the things trending today is this obsession with the millennial mind. Now, maybe I'm a little biased, I'm over 60, but my view is, what about the aspiration of the aged people? And I was looking up some data, and I saw that by the year 2050, the population over 60 years is going to double from 12% to 22%. And 80% of that population is going to be in low and middle income countries. In fact, by next year, there will be more people over the age of 60 than there will be 5-year-old kids and below. So what about them? I know that as far as my consumption is concerned, I'm a baby boomer. That cohort made money. They're the most affluent cohort going. Now, I buy for my kids, and I buy for my grandson. So I'm consumption 3 times or 3x. But people are moving their view away from this segment, from this cohort. But if you look at what they want, whether it's healthcare in the home, one of the partners I've been speaking to while I've been here is very interested in one of our businesses which provides home care, and specifically for the aged people. There's a huge opportunity there. There's an opportunity, just to pull something out of my hat, for what I call distributed leisure. If you look at older people, I don't want to go to Disney World anymore. I don't want to travel that more, cities are congested. What about creating distributed entertainment spaces that are compact and cater to people like me and others? So I believe that's one area which is not trending, but should be trending. But if you follow that perception, things like farming, precision farming, agriculture is not supposed to be trending these days, but precision agriculture, whether it's through drones or autonomous tractors, enormous area of opportunity as the world is going to struggle to feed itself. Or take even nostalgia. I know that in India today, one of the biggest selling products is something that looks like an old radio from the 60s and spews out Lata Mangeshkar tunes. And in my own group, we have revived a brand called the Java motorcycle, which used to be a legendary bike in the 70s. And today we are struggling to meet a waiting list that is a year long. Now that, of course, is not that we are selling only to older people. But what I'm saying is that what made sense to older people needs to be divined, and there's a motherlode of monetization waiting if you can cash in on that trend. So basically what I'm saying, Ayesha, is go against the trend. Look for things people aren't looking at. Those are the biggest opportunities.
That's very interesting. And coming to India, where some of these trends you're talking about, but usually people tend to focus on the young people in India. As you rightly said, there's an aging population too over there. But what, in your opinion, is the economic outlook for India, and what are the drivers of the economic growth there?
As you know, when Prime Minister Modi was here, and his vision is a $5 trillion economy by 2025. And there's no shortage of naysayers who talk about the fact that that kind of growth will require a growth rate of over 10%. And what I'd like to stress is that Mr. Modi is not a statistician. He's in the business of inspiring. So the question is, tell me one goal he set that is not a stretch goal. And I think it's time that in India we did stretch ourselves. So to me, it's immaterial whether you really hit the 5 trillion, go a little under it or go over it. The question is, we are setting ambitions very high. The second thing about India, why I'm very optimistic, despite the dip in the growth rate down to 5%, the reason that's happened is, let me use a metaphor. In a sense, what he's been doing the past few years is providing a kind of vaccination, if you will. And by that I mean, I believe Mr. Modi's goal is to have growth with integrity, growth with systems that are clear. He doesn't want corruption. He doesn't want crony capitalism. There are a number of economies in the world. I won't name any, but in Latin America, there are a number of them which have grown significantly, but today are dealing with obstacles of endemic corruption. Mr. Modi wants a path to the top, but he wants it which is without any of that. So everything he's done, whether it's demonetization, the goods and services tax, the bankruptcy code, all of that is to, in a sense, sanitize the system. There is a short-term trade-off, but when the growth comes, it will be spectacular and it will be sustainable.
It's nice to see this optimism from you in India. And what about the fact that, what is next for global trade? I mean, we live in this time where there is so much uncertainty. And yet you operate these huge enterprises. What is your opinion on where that's going?
Multilateralism, the beauty of it is inclusive. It includes every economy in the world, no matter how small. But if I have to be a little brutally honest rather, India, in fact, is a beneficiary of trade frictions and geopolitical tensions, because I remember last year, prior to President Trump coming in, India was being warned, you're being left out of all the global trading blocs, TPP. We were really being isolated. And all of a sudden, we are back in play again, because bilateralism is in. Bilateralism works in favor of economies like India, which are large, and which people will want to negotiate with to get access to. So, in a funny sense, India is going to benefit from this bilateral negotiation regime. When multilateralism returns, India will be in a much more strategically placed position to take advantage of that.
Mr. Mahindra, thank you. Clearly, your counterintuitive arguments are based on a vast wealth of experience and are very insightful and useful. Please join me in thanking Mr. Mahindra for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our next session is on smart cities. And we have two incredible speakers joining us, Mr. Alabar, founder and chairman of Emaar Properties, and Mr. Al Nasser, group CEO of Saudi Telecom. Thank you. Nice to see you again. So So, Mr. Alivar, perhaps we can start with you. What is next for global society?
Well, first, give me a chance to really say thank you to everybody who's involved in this amazing event, and I would like to congratulate His Majesty and His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and my colleagues in PIF for really hosting this amazing event, and the amazing people who come and attend it and getting stronger and stronger, so congratulations, well done. This is a big, simple question, and I guess it depends on when you ask it. So if you ask the question these days, I think when you look at all the protests around the world, it's almost like it stops you from thinking. And if you are socially responsible, you say, well, I can talk about smart cities, I can talk about connectivity, I can talk about all this stuff. But I think that's, to be socially responsible, you really have to see that, whatever we do, and all of us here, and including you and the amazing speakers, is that, we're all about innovation, we're all about progress, for profit, of course, but for our society as well. So the thing that really we need to kind of combine and link is that how can we really link all the greatness of these minds and the technology and the great government policies and so forth, and to really just improve human life. So we have lists of the yellow vests, we have less trouble in South America, we have less trouble in Europe, we have quietness in Lebanon maybe, and maybe in Asia as well. So I think you have to combine all the stuff that we talk about and the reality on the ground is that, we speak about these amazing things, but how is that really going to affect the stuff we see on the street, which is basically people revolting for a better life? And I'm sure between great governments and great private sector, that can be sorted.
I think that's a really important thing to remember, is the human element in this debate and discussion on smart cities. But equally profound is some of the technological innovations that are going in, and the telcos are at the center of that innovation as well. So Mr. Nasser, could you tell us about some of the enabling factors, including technologies, that you are seeing emerge in smart cities?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ayesha. I believe connectivity is at the core of whatever you need to do in terms of smart cities or the new transformation that's being required at different industries. So whether at the fiber level or at the mobile level, and 5G is now even giving a step change to the way the transformation that's happened in the past compared to today. I'm glad that I am, following the minister, talk about what's happening at the national level. He already shed some lights on what's happening at the transformational impact of the infrastructure in the country, which is a pillar of the enablement of the digitization and the 2030 vision. Alhamdulillah, I believe that we are more geared to claim that we are one of the pioneers in this field. The 5G was launched mid of last year at the country level, and the promise of the 5G is even beyond what we think. So that's from the connectivity perspective. If we go to what we need to have a smart city, the connectivity is the foundation, but you need other elements. You need to sensor almost everything. And that's where IoT has to come and play. And I'm proud to say that almost all our sites today are well equipped with narrowband IoT, which is the latest technology. So this is, by censoring everything, you get the information, you can have the commands, you can do the operation, you can do the change, and you can do the big analytics, artificial intelligence, all the things by censoring everything. Cloud complement this one, where you have the superpower, the supercomputing that's required to make sure that you can handle and aggregate this kind of level of information and the interaction among different verticals and industries. And on top of that, where the AI comes on a vertical level, so that for efficiency, for automation, for taking the actions, utilizing this data. So these are the four pillars, and alhamdulillah, I'm proud to say that as a country, we're progressing on all four dimensions to make sure that we are geared for the future.
I think it's been really inspiring and exciting for me also, and the audience, I'm sure, to learn about, again, as I mentioned earlier with the minister, the speed and execution with which some of these initiatives are happening right here. while the public sector, the telcos, and the government are important, Mr. Alabar, what is the role of the private sector in the smart city?
Well, I think the private sector, of course, we'll have to agree that I think driven mainly by efficiency, by its objectives, by profitability, but I really think that's not good enough anymore. I think we as private sector as well, and the private sector in general, is that I think without a society that's functioning right, that's balanced, I don't think there is room for private sector. It's a fact of life, right? But also when we question that, the struggle that we have, and you look at these magnificent, huge, private entities, which is basically a new phenomenon in the world that we really do not know how to deal with. As an example, how Apple pays Google $12 billion a year only to put, their Google on their phones. These large companies, including us as well, is that what are we really doing for the well-being of society? Many great companies, they do so much, to focus on values. That beside profit, what are the values? And there's an internal struggle in companies. But the good news is that I think a lot of great companies, they're really taking advantage of that and moving in the right to balance. My personal criticism, I really think that these big, giant, mammoth monopolies, the Googles, the Facebooks, and the others, I don't think these guys are doing enough, because $12 billion, you could solve probably the problem of 5 countries if you were to kind of support it indirectly instead of paying it to Apple. But I guess they want to be a monopoly. Google want to be a monopoly, so they have to pay it to Apple. But I really believe that more and more of these entities are really doing better. I think when we discuss it openly like this, we've got a lot of amazing groups in the world that remind businessmen like us to say, hey, you are doing, but you're not doing enough. So I think the path is not that easy, but there are amazing examples of organization going that route, taking that route.
I think it's really heartwarming to see this emphasis again and again on again, human-centered smart cities. We saw it with His Excellency, the Minister, speaking about the importance of inclusiveness and the digitalization roadmap.
And I would like to say, I don't think it has to do with rules or regulation. I really think it has to do with good, pure human beings who succeed and they do well and they say, listen, great. What else? Now I'm successful, but I owe it to so many people. What am I going to do about it? And I really think that there are an amazing number of people who set the example for all of us to follow.
I think that one of the things we keep hearing about is that, who should be in the ecosystem that puts together, and that comes back to the values they bring in, et cetera, the smart city programs. Mr. Al-Nasser, how important is the partnership between governments and the private sector when building smart city programs?
I believe the partnership is essential for successful of such project. Private sector will play a key role into the smart cities, yet the patronage from the government, whether from legislative point of view, whether from processes point of view, from subsidy. His Excellency the Minister mentioned about what happened in the fiber and the 5G from the subsidy from the government to make sure that whatever not viable from business perspective is being incentivized. So I believe it is a complementary role. Legislation has to play a role, and I believe digitization, even of the government process and processes, should play a major role into the smart city. I believe that digitization of government processes, one-stop shop, having drones, etc., to make sure that the environment is conducive for the private sector to be able to leapfrog in the smart cities domain. So it is a combination of both.
I think one of the things that we speak about is once you lay the infrastructure, then how do you help the local economies? How is the data that you're working on helping the local economies, the big data leading to actually change with the smaller companies? Mr. Alabar, what are your thoughts on that? Once the infrastructure is there, now the next step in terms of the small businesses?
Well, the big question here, I think, for all of us is that we have to ask who owns the data. You know, I mean, if the big giants, they know how many minutes I stay in the shower or in the bathroom because, you know, they're linked to my phone. So that data is mine, but they're selling advertising on my behavior, right? So it's a big debate. I don't know who owns the data, but if it's my data, then I own it, but never mind. I would like to say that if I were to just take a small example of our Noon platform in the region, you can see that there's so much you can collect, so valuable. But then again, you know, you're going to use it for your commercial needs. But how much of it is going back to all the connectivity that the city have beside a platform like Noon and understanding, you know, shoppers' behavior and so forth. But what else are you going to do about this information? And I really believe from the small example of what we see every day, you know, few million people on our platform and we watch their behavior, I really think that great human being in most of us is that we come back and say, okay, that's great, but how can that add to the Sahha platform that His Excellency mentioned to really look after our people better? How can we do that? Or if you were to get, you know, more information from the other sensors that you put everywhere in the city, how can we really improve the quality of human life? If it's the education, or if it's behavior, or if it's cleanliness, or if it's clean water, if it's conserving, you know, conserving energy, if it's serving the older people more. So how can we really improve the well-being of this society? So if we are concerned about what's going on in South America and people protesting, or in Lebanon people are protesting, or other parts of the world, how can we really take all that data and genuinely add value to government decisions, adds value to business decisions, so we really enhance the value of the life of the people who live with us, our families and our kids and our friends and our neighbors.
So really creating value for all out of the data. And yet, now with 5G, there is going to be a data explosion.
Yes.
Mr. Al-Nasser, you know, you've been talking about 5G in the kingdom. How do you think 5G will further transform the smart city?
What I look at the 5G is not, you know, as an incremental evolution to the previous generation. I believe it is a step function change compared to previous generations. You know, in the previous generation, usually the difference is a throughput, as you know, that this speed you go from X to Y in terms of speed. But if you look at the 5G, it's about latency, it's about the multi-access edge computing, it's about slicing. It's about a lot of capability that goes well above and beyond the previous generations of the mobility. So I believe personally that 5G is at the core of the fourth industrial revolution, at the core of whatever we do. We are looking at, His Excellency mentioned about the virtual reality. I believe the 5G with its latency and coupled with the edge computing will play a vital role, where it will be a lifestyle changer to the people. If you look at the health and the operations, you know, remote operations, etc., 5G will play a great role. If you look at the industrialization and different verticals, 5G is the core of the thing. So what I believe is that the demand that the supply of the 5G will create, we are only, you know, scratching the surface of that demand, and a lot of application coupled with artificial intelligence. And if I just want to pick on the data issue that Muhammad mentioned, I believe artificial intelligence as you know, a capability was there for decades. But what is fueling artificial intelligence today is the data that we are collecting through different sensors, through different apps, through different interaction. How many times does, you know, a person touches his smartphone per hour compared to, you know, a conventional communication that is in the past. So with this in mind, if you take the 5G with the cloud, with multi-access edge computing, that's what revolutionized almost everything we do in life today.
I think indeed the 5G revolution is coming upon us. And one of the things that we have to remember in all this, Mr. Alabar, as you mentioned, is the social transformation that it brings with this. So if you have any final thoughts on this idea of the human element in technology, that would be great to hear.
Well, again, it depends which part of the world. And if you will you ask me this question and I'm American, I'll probably give you a different answer compared to somebody in China, or maybe China and the Middle East are quite similar. But, I just look at my neighborhood and answer your question, is that, we need to educate people better. We need to shorten, if the scale of 3G is going to give us a scale of shortening, the path of progress, if it's really education, which I think is going to happen, healthcare, which is so critical for all of us. I think more importantly also is that what are we doing to enable all of that, to educate our kids and educate ourselves? Because I think, the business of education, it's one thing that we send our kids to school or keep them educated, but I think the flow of data and the flow of information through this incredible machine, and the value of all that to our, processing ability is something very close to, personally, it's the most valuable thing for me, if you tell me, because I think this thing, even though the skull is the limit of what I can do because of the size of our brain, but at the same time, how can we have all that and add it to really improve our capability to do more? So looking at the Middle East, I really believe that, I always give this very boring example. I said, during my dad's days, even though he doesn't read or write, but there was no electricity, there's no running water. And now our kids, have this flow of information that's just flabbergasting, which means that their capability compared to my dad's ability and my mom's ability, where electricity comes in 3 hours a day or sometimes 1 hour a day, is so massive. And I really think that this value, the true value of our discussion is that enriching our society from education to infrastructure to learning, to become a better human being, that you can deal with work, that you can innovate more, that you can do more. More importantly, that our young people can start their businesses or their ideas and just go to the world and do business with the world, because there's no more boundaries now. I don't really have to go and open this factory or that shop. I can just open it up and do business with the world. So, and I really appreciate, all the work that the government of Saudi Arabia and in the region, the governments are doing to really connect our society, create this revolution in technology to enrich people's life for better living and better economic progress.
Mr. Al-Nasser, my final question to you, given that we have discussed the potential of smart cities at every level to transform work, play, education, healthcare, you are in the driver's seat of one of the great platforms, a telco, that is building this smart city as a platform. What are the main components of a smart city initiative?
I believe, it is like a fit for purpose. Smart cities is a quite fluid statement, so everybody's looking. I believe the gap will decide where you tackle. You cannot tackle everything almost at the same time, so where you start. From my perspective, I believe one of the major incremental impact of transforming the cities is the transportation. Look at how much you do in terms of the planet, environment, term of the efficiency of people, in terms of the energy, in terms of the quality time that people can spend. If you only transform the transportation, data comes at the core of that transformation, but this is one of the dimensions. The same goes to, the health, the services, whether it's public or private services, the surveillance, so you can span almost everything, smart homes, but I believe transformation with what's happening at urbanization. Cities becomes more dense and dense. It's expected by 2025 that more than 5 billion will stay in cities. So this strain the resources in terms of infrastructure, in terms of all different resources. So there will be a big impact by just working on the transportation and transforming the transportation with its associate, whether it is a parking, whether it is the streets, whether it is the methodology of operation and transforming people. people, whether it is the congestion management, mobility behavior, all mobility pattern, all related aspect of transportation. I believe that always at the core of the pain of the smart cities today.
And if I just want to add that I really think one of the critical things that we have to keep in mind when we talk about smart cities, we should really think simple, because smart cities, people can take you over a menu about 45,000 things, and I absolutely agree with you, is that there are basic things that we can get a lot of value out of when we think about smart cities. So the mobility is so critical. I think that, for example, I give you an example. We typically master plan large sites. Just using AI to lay down our buildings only to study shade, because we in the Middle East, shade is more important than air for us, for example, because of heat. We study, and it's all through AI and technology, and that's really smart city. We come in and lay down, for example, all of our parks with our buildings, and we study airflow. And then, you move few buildings around, and there's a better airflow, there's better temperature in that environment. But then again, even when it comes to, say, for example, we put in all these roads and highway lights, as an example. Just by having this being modeled through our systems, and it's all intelligent systems, you can really realize that, maybe we should have 50% less lights in certain areas. That alone, not only, I don't think it's so much about saving money, but I really think it's about caring for the society and the environment and being efficient and being responsible. So these are a very powerful example that you touched on. I totally agree.
Thank you.
And I'm also especially a big fan of the idea of mobility as part of smart cities. My PhD is on smart cities and mobility. So please join me in thanking these very interesting and pertinent remarks on smart cities. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Alabar. Thank you, Mr. Nasser. Thank you. That was great. I would now like to speak about intelligent innovations, and it is my great honor to invite Dr. Hong, President and CEO of Samsung, to join me. I see you. Dr. Hong.
Yes.
Can you tell us what technologies will define Samsung in the future?
Well, among the number of new and disruptive technologies, in our view, AI, 5G, and IoT will make a significant influence in almost every industry. So they are the top priority to focus on in Samsung. By the way, I brought some slides to share some of our thoughts. So if that is up, then we will continue. Can you?
Maybe you have to press that.
Oh. Do I have to do that? All right. So once again, we mentioned the three things, right? AI, 5G, and IoT. And the first slide is concerning AI. Well, AI now is being embedded into a variety of the different devices. And it is now evolving to support virtual agent, where AI communicate like human beings or involved in the conversation like human beings. So we call it human to AI. But we also believe that it will continue to evolve so that the AI will communicate among themselves to handle the more complicated tasks. So we call it AI to AI, okay? And then next slide is concerning 5G. Minister and also leader of Saudi Telecom talked about it briefly. And actually 4G really made a change in how we utilize the data, how we consume the data. However, shift from 4G to 5G, as they talked about it briefly, will revolutionize how we utilize AI and IoT. And as they mentioned also partially, it's mainly because 5G has very unique strengths, such as super high speed, ultra low latency, and also I'd like to add another one, which is very, very important in industry applications, which is massive connectivity. All right, so next slide is concerning the IoT. Well, IoT has been in the market for a while. However, now it's pretty much evolved to be able to introduce large volume of real-time data. Now, I like to emphasize real-time. Real-time data is so important in many industrial applications. For example, real-time data from IoT sensors in the manufacturing process are so crucial for predictive maintenance as well as AI-based defect investigations. Anyway, so each of these technologies are disruptive by itself. But in our opinion, the confluence of all these three will make an even deeper influence on all the industries. And so we want to really make this priority to moving forward.
I mean, as this is so relevant for all industries, which industries are you focusing on for enterprise partnerships?
Okay, probably, all right, okay. These slides might help us to talk about it. Now, from business standpoint, Samsung is involved in a wide range of industries. It includes construction, consumer electronics, IT service, which is directly related to my company, and healthcare, and more recently, cybersecurity very much, right? And Samsung now focusing on 4 main domains, and as shown on this chart. And they are directly and indirectly related to smart cities. That's why we are so excited to participate in the national projects of this kingdom, and we will continue to make them a priority moving forward, right, from that business perspective.
And what innovations are most exciting for Samsung in the consumer space?
Consumer space, right. I think we should look at the AI also seriously in the consumer space also. It's mainly because AI will drastically change how we interact with the world around us. And you and I, we know that some of the consumers are already using AI-enabled products and services at home and in offices. And we're confident that AI will continue to evolve and to be able to create new level of customer experience once again in the consumer space.
I mean, I have to really agree with you, especially in artificial intelligence, since we build artificial intelligence engines for telcos, for banks, for transportation companies, we see a great deal of interest in the consumer space as well, with the increasing use of data and then AI. But you know, when people are starting, companies are starting, even tech companies, there are challenges that they face. What are the greatest challenges, in your opinion, given your experience, that tech companies today face when they're trying to adopt these technologies?
You know, Dr. Khanna, that's very, very important and good question. There are many, many challenges in front of us now, and we can spend maybe hours to talk about it. But today, I would like to touch upon a couple of the challenges. The first one is the okay, all right, this slide can help me too. Now, the first one is AI bias. So as we talked about, the AI is heavily depending on the data set, the power set. So companies should be very careful in choosing data set and when they develop the AI capabilities in-house. And another the challenge that I like to mention is energy consumption, more precisely electric power consumption. Now, as we talked about, when the number of the connected devices increase, the amount of data that we have to handle are really increasing exponentially. Since most of those data are stored and handled in the cloud of data centers, So power consumption at the data centers now has become already concerned. Let me explain with one specific example. In 2017, I think the slide will also show that data too. In 2017, the total the electrical power consumption at data centers around the world was approximately 400 terawatt. That is bigger than total amount of power consumption in this kingdom during the same year. And according to research report, that is going to be doubled every 3 to 4 years. So this is a very, very significant issue. So in my opinion, the green energy policy, like what is being done in this kingdom, is really meaningful and also important to address this issue. By the way, at the booth in the marketplace, as a strategic partner of FII, we put the the booth to show some of the real cases of the interconnected technologies to the audience. So I'm sure that they will find them interesting.
Dr. Hong, thank you for pointing out these issues of bias and energy consumption. I think they're very important to realize that every time we invest in technologies, we also have to govern their downsides.
Right.
And it's great to see a company like Samsung addressing both things at the same time.
I think we should do that. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Please join me in thanking Dr. Hong.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hong. Let's move our conversation now to digital nations. And there's no place more digital than Estonia in many people's minds. And so it is my great pleasure to invite Mr. Taavi Kotka, former CIO of Estonia and founder of Proud Engineers, LLC. So Taavi, how has Estonia become such a symbol of digital nations in the world?
We were just lucky. No, I mean, we have a pain. I mean, if you have a small country without too many natural resources, like you have to start operating your government and your society in a different model. And I think we have reached just earlier to the point where all the countries will reach during next decades. And the question is like how rapidly they can move forward. And I think the big difference what Estonia did was that you can't build a digital society alone. It cannot be only government, or it cannot be only private sector. It has to be a very strong relationship between the private sector and government to build the society together. Because without that, the people will adopt those new technologies. They don't adopt the new ways, methods like how to interact among each other or with the government or private sector.
What have been some of the most significant outcomes of the digitization initiative in Estonia so far?
I mean, all the governments, I think, in the world are silos. So there are different ministries, different agencies, etc. Plus you have private sector, different banks, different telecoms. So silo, 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 silo. Data, 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 data. But that data doesn't talk with each other. And I think one of the success stories, and once again, in the end of the day, all the countries will reach that point. Imagine that everybody and every institution is able to talk with any other institution. And what is the collective knowledge and power that basically can be created out of that? The societies quite quickly will reach in a situation where you have, you don't have questions anymore. Basically, your ability to ask right question is limited. I mean, your knowledge is limited. So you have more answers because you can search any kind of data, you can combine any kind of data that is created in private sector or government sector because everybody is able to share and it's high quality data. And you're running out from questions. So I think that's like one of the most interesting outcomes.
when the government takes the lead in some of the innovations, such as has happened in Estonia, what are some of the challenges with state-led investments in technology, if any?
There obviously is. Like, for example, in most countries, very simple things are not solved yet. Let's say in UK or in US, like you have a problem with unique identifiers, how you connect different databases between the government and the private sector because they don't see a person in the same way. Or, I mean, this is still not solved, like, for example, who is behind the device. How can I be sure that it's you who is using the device and signing contracts and everything? Like, so it's simple stuff, and governments cannot do it alone. And the private sector cannot do it alone. So that's like one of the first things, like, you have to act together. Like, so there, I mean, if you have a digital society roadmap or something, like, it has to be supported heavily by the banks, by the telcos, by utilities, and any other large player on the market.
We were talking about it earlier also in our Smart Cities panel, the importance of public-private sector cooperation. But what have some of the things that Estonia has done to actually make this partnership successful? Is there an example or two that you could cite?
We like to call it innovation through pain. It means that innovation is always painful to somebody. Like, so instead of asking, like, would you like to do this or that, we just say, like, from the 1st of December, this is now mandatory. I know it sounds like it's a democratic society, and like it sounds like, I mean, like, what a fascist country. But my country separated digitalization from politics. So it's an engineering question. Like, for example, if you want to combine the silos, if you want to push them to talk with each other, those are engineering problems. They are not political problems. And many countries, they just mess up with this, like they mix it with politics. So if you look at, for example, what China has achieved and what Sweden has achieved, even though they are totally different countries, from the engineering perspective, they're the same. And that's, I think, one of the key elements what countries haven't figured out and also still struggle in this part of the world, that, like, let the engineers do the engineering stuff and let the politics do the politics.
Easier said than done.
True.
Now, there are so many technologies and innovations that we've been talking about. There's AI, there's cybersecurity, there's VR, AR, fintech. What do you think are the ones that would have the most impact on the future?
I mean, there is one phase before that. AI and all this, like, great stuff happens mostly on silo basis. Like the minister also told, like, for example, healthcare. And it's absolutely right. But there is a next level, like, for example, how your everyday grocery bag influences your life, for example, or life quality. And that's the future. So we will see, like, more and more governments, like, combining their data all around the society, and then there will be a shock. The shock will be that they understand how low quality data they actually have. And when they have the single source of truth put in place, when the silos start to talk with each other, then the quality goes up, and after that, like, perfect AI can be built on top of that. So I think, like, there is a missing link before we start talking about, like, a pure AI cross silos, cross disciplines.
I think that what is interesting, Tavi, in the way you're talking is that Estonia, and under your helm as well, has achieved so much that you are able to have a kind of bird's eye view of what has worked and what are some of the pain points. One of the things I know that's close to your heart is talent development, something that the entire world is struggling with in terms of technology, data scientists. What are some of your thoughts? How does Estonia think about talent development? And you personally?
Yeah, I mean, like, what we understood is that if you are living in a rough climate, and I understand this audience very well understands the rough climate. In our case, it means not plus 31, it means in average plus 5. So you have a constant winter. And it means that you can't actually get physically the best people into your country. They don't like darkness, they don't like cold. So one thing to do that is to connect them virtually. And I think that's the future, and many countries, also Dubai has already started to do that, that you have the digital citizenship. You can basically include people from, like, the location is not so important anymore. So it doesn't matter where you live until you are connected with my economy. So, and the future competition between the countries definitely is about like who gets the best talent connected with the country. Today, the best country is US, but the future is about the virtual talent. Who gets the virtual talent to be connected with their country? So that's a challenge. And for that, you need a digital society.
Very interesting. And clearly, Estonia is leading the way in digital citizenship and many other ways as well. Thank you so much, Tavi, for your insights. Please join me in thanking Tavi. And now we move on to a session on digitized societies. And we have the pleasure of the CEO, Dr. Li Xu, of one of the most highly regarded artificial intelligence companies in China, SenseTime. Dr. Li. Dr. Li, tell us a little bit about SenseTime and its core mission.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Actually, SenseTime was founded by several professors and PhDs, so that's why we have a very collegiate culture. And our core mission is to think about the gap between fundamental research and industrial use. So usually, we think that technology breakthrough should be done in a university, but today, we are in the area of big data area. So you have to deal with the big data in the industry, demands from the industry. So that's why we think we should bridge the gap between academia and the industry, try to push the envelope of the technological breakthrough, and contribute to make AI contribute positively to the society, economics, and humanity.
Now, you started off in China, but now SenseTime is looking at the entire world as its market. What is your globalization strategy?
Yeah, we think that the technology should not have the national borders. Yeah. When we are originating in China, we see a huge demand in different sectors, public sectors, private sectors. Here we are helping the government to set up the smart nation, smart city, and promote efficiency in different verticals. So given those best practices, I think it is our responsibility to bring those use cases to the rest of the world. So that's why we actually set our international hub in Singapore, and now we are here, we're exploring the Middle East market. I think our experience in China, especially in the smart city and payment, fintech, would definitely contribute in the plan for different regions.
SenseTime has managed to show artificial intelligence applied at scale. This is something that many companies, including very old companies and large legacy companies, struggle with. What is some of the advice that you could give as a company to other large enterprises looking to start their AI journey?
Yeah, so just as mentioned by the ministers and the previous speakers, data is the most important thing. Although there is a data bias and the barriers between different departments of sharing the data, but before you're getting into the AI journey, you should prepare the data. And previously, people are dealing with the so-called structured data, but today, I think the AI capabilities can help you to extract unstructured information from different various data, videos, or voices, and NLPs, languages, and actually you will have a plenty of big data, and this is the first thing. And second, I think it is not about the maturity of technology. It is about the thought of how to use the AI. So every company should have a AI outlook of the development. So AI development thought is the most important thing to design their business model. So what we see in China is that given AI, people always can redesign their business model, their use cases, and so that they can really enjoy the benefits of the new technology. So that's why I think for most of traditional companies and traditional industries, the one first important thing is to have a kind of AI outlook of the development. Yeah.
I think that's very interesting. Usually companies tend to just layer on AI on what they have. But what you're recommending is having a very specific outlook and strategy that is new business model innovation with AI as the core driver. One of the things is when you have data, you also need other data. Really, you probably have to work in an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. What is the ecosystem in which SenseTime works, and what do you think about the need for ecosystems?
Yeah, today I think no single companies can actually finish the task for the AI revolution. So there is a lot of demands from the market, and different technology breakthroughs is needed. So the first important thing for us is to actually form the so-called partnership with different companies, and so that you could come up with a total solution as a whole, not segmented different functions, because you should have a unified map. Given that map, not even the small society or even the whole nations can be involved. So even for the kingdom, I think the most important thing is to have a top-down master plan, and then you can gather different companies that form a, for example, so-called the venture team, right?
Venture team, I love that. What about the fact that there's so much talk about the ethical frameworks for artificial intelligence? And as a global leader in artificial intelligence, what are some of your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think, AI is a super powerful tool and productivity tool. So the great power typically comes with a greater responsibility. So I think leading AI companies should play a major role, not only work with the customers, work with the partners, and even work with the governors, come up with new regulation. It should be different from the previous one. It should embrace the tech breakthrough. For example, if when we come from China, maybe 10 years ago, people cannot imagine that living in a country without cash. But today, everything's true. But maybe 10 years after, so people live in a country without any devices, mobile phones, because everything's related to your ID, and you can enjoy a very efficient society. But given those developments, the traditional view of the code of ethics should be adopted and change dynamically. But still, the leading company should play a significant role to team up with different parties to come up with new regulations. Yeah.
Dr. Lee, I guess my last question to you will be, what's next for SenseTime? What are the innovations that you're working on in your product at the moment?
Yeah, today's our product. There is two ways to do the product innovation. The first is always listen to your customers. The demands and needs in your customer. So actually, our product innovation, the major line is actually come from the demands from the market. It accounts for 80% of our product. But there is still something that is top-down, what we call, the top is not about top management. Usually some projects leading by top management fails, right? But as a top means that the tech breakthrough. You're always expecting the so-called unexpected breakthroughs in technology, and those unexpected breakthroughs can really bring in huge productivity tools and can unleash a superpower. So given that knowledge and given those advanced technologies, you should think about what could the technology do for different verticals, and that will bring in the super products, so the star. So that's actually the two ways for product innovation in the SenseTime.
That's fantastic. I mean, customer feedback as a way of innovation is really the right way forward. And it's interesting to hear that even with artificial intelligence, you've used that to achieve the massive growth and scale you have. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Lee. Thank you so much. We have been talking about innovation. Now I would like to talk about innovation with an E. And for this, I'd like to invite two speakers, Mr. Alejandro Agag, Chairman of Formula E Holdings, and Mr. Peter Rawlinson, CEO and CTO of Lucid Motors. Alejandro, thank you. Hello. Hi, Peter. Thank you. So, Alejandro, I believe you have a video that you'd like to share with us and tell us a little bit about Formula E.
Yes. Well, hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's my third time as a speaker in the FII, so I've been here in every FII, and I hope to keep coming. Yasser, please invite me. And last year we were here and we announced that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was becoming the home of Formula E. And today we are making another very exciting announcement. The Kingdom is going to become the home of Extreme E, which is a new championship. Many of you have seen this SUV car at the entrance of the hotel, of the Ritz. And the two main electric car championships are going to take place in Saudi Arabia. And this would not happen, of course, without Vision 2030 and the vision of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed. So it's great that we're going to have this here. And to tell you what Extreme E is, I think the best way is to show you this video.
Extreme E is an all-new global racing championship, pitting the world's top manufacturers in head-to-head racing. With our all-electric SUV, across the world's most vulnerable locations that have been directly affected by climate change.
If we look at the surface of the ice here, we can see that it's melting.
We are in a new trend of increasing deforestation. That's not a good sign for us.
So it has become utmost important that places in the Himalayas themselves turn clean.
This might be it.
12 teams will face off, developing key components of the all-electric Odyssey 21 with a standard set of parts provided for all opponents, ensuring tight wheel-to-wheel action across these damaged locations. Team Garage will be the St. Helena. Scientists will use this new floating harbor's base and research center to collect data on the endangered landscapes we visit, supporting vital insight into climate patterns and using sport as a platform for change.
I think this is going to be the most extreme form of motorsport.
I'm very aware that the planet have a problem at the moment and we need to give awareness to people of what needs to be done.
We can tell stories in the most vulnerable and important ecological parts of the planet.
Well, it's not only providing great motorsport entertainment, but it's also going to raise awareness for climate change.
Extreme E, the electric Odyssey begins.
Yes, so thank you. So just to clarify, we are going to take these electric SUVs to the most extreme locations in the planet, to places that are already destroyed. We're going to the Amazon rainforest, for example, to race on an area that has been devastated by fire. We're going to the Arctic in areas where there used to be ice and now there is no more ice. We're going to the Himalayas in valleys where there used to be glaciers, now there are no glaciers. So we're going to highlight with this championship the big challenges that the planet is facing. And we're going to race also in Saudi Arabia. We're going to talk about desertification. This country has the largest desert, continuous desert in the planet. And we're going to talk about what technology can do to solve the challenges of climate. Like Formula E with Formula cars, this becomes the new off-road electrical championship globally.
That's remarkable. And especially the mission makes it all the more profound and poignant. Peter, I'd like to come briefly to you since you supply the batteries.
Yes, indeed.
And we would love to hear a little bit more about Lucid Motors and the batteries with some slides, I believe, that you have.
Certainly. Well, first of all, thank you. It's a great honor to be here today. I'm the CEO of Lucid Motors, and we're a Californian-based, Silicon Valley-based electric car company. And we have some slides to show to that effect. Now, the car is the Lucid Air. That is our first production car. And our purpose, our mission, is to inspire the adoption of sustainable mobility, and unashamedly do that by the most magnificent product, cars that all the world is going to want. We do all the technology in-house, and because of that, we have total control of that electric powertrain, which is truly state-of-the-art. We're able to reimagine the car, reimagine the layout of that vehicle, and we're able to make a car which is more compact on the outside and much more spacious on the inside. And actually, remarkably, we've done that to such effect that on the outside, our car has a smaller footprint than a Tesla Model S, even smaller than the new Porsche Taycan. But it has more interior space than a long wheelbase S-Class Mercedes. So we have a car which looks like this, and we have rear seats which are aircraft inspired, which have more tilt than even a Maybach in this compact package. We're a Silicon Valley company, and as you'd expect, software plays a leading part, a leading role in this creation. So we have unsurpassed user experience with all the programming created in-house. As you might expect, this leads to a car with outstanding performance and range. We have 0 to 60 sub 2.5 seconds, but that range is landmark. We'll launch with over 400-mile range, and that's not with some urban cycle. That's at highway speed. That's at freeway speed, because the car is so efficient. And therefore, the Lucid Air will be the first intercity electric car, I think a real game changer. Here we have an artist's impression of our factory, which we're currently creating in Casa Grande in Arizona, where we're going to build the Air and subsequent models. But I really want to say this, that I think that I speak for all the management team at Lucid, that we have a huge commitment to helping contribute to the genesis of a motor industry here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. One thing I'm particularly proud of is the relationship with this man here, Alejandro. We are the official supplier of battery technology to Formula E, and we supply all the teams on the grid, and we've done that since last season, a year ago. We've had a 100% reliability record so far, and we hope to keep that reliability record going. This is a picture of the pack we designed, created, and actually manufacture in our head office in California, and this is supplied to all the teams. One of the interesting features of this pack is this trapezium shape. It's an innovative shape. It shows that a battery pack can be more than just a square box. Look how it's sculpted to fit the structural and aerodynamic package of the race car. Really integrated, joined up thinking within the car. Battery much more than just a source of pure energy. And this is the facility, our facility in California, where we make those packs. So we aim to get our car into production in Arizona at the end of next year, and hopefully some lucky customers will be taking delivery in the kingdom early in 21.
Thank you so much. So Alejandro, a lot of what goes into Formula E, Extreme E, is the technology. So what specific technologies are you using that's driving this kind of transformation?
So obviously the big transformation, and Peter just said, they provide the batteries for Formula E. The big stop is the battery. That's the big limit of electric cars at the moment. And they do a fantastic job providing our batteries for Formula E. But I always get asked the same question. Who goes faster, Formula 1 or Formula E? We could go faster, but only for like 20 minutes, until he makes a battery that can make possible to go for like an hour and a half. The big frontier is the battery. But I like to see this as we are living on the pre-discovery era. A few decades ago, an engineer called Moore discovered that he could store information on silicon. And that changed the world. And we have on our mobile phones more processing capacity than computers before that moment that would occupy huge buildings. I'm hoping that there will be the same discovery for energy storage. It's also a chemical problem. Somebody needs to crack it. Hopefully you will, or someone will. And then our batteries on our phones will last for a month, and our electric cars will go for 2,000 kilometers. That moment hopefully has to come. For the moment, increases in battery capacity are 5% a year. That's okay, but it's not good enough. So battery technology really is the mother of all the technologies that we need basically to do the next technology revolution. And hopefully, then we can go faster than Formula One.
Peter, when is that going to happen then? All pressure on you.
Well, a lot of this, you're actually right. The advancement in cell chemistry is moving forward, but we're waiting for a real big breakthrough in that area. But I think we need to distinguish between the skills and the expertise in creating cells and the expertise in creating battery packs. Our core expertise is actually integrating those cells, many thousands of units, integrating them in a cohesive way with an advanced battery management system to create a pack.
I mean, Peter, another thing I'd like to ask you, you have a road car now. Often, you have used the road car technology to also inform your design, race cars, and vice versa. That's very unusual, isn't it?
Yes, actually, there's a beautiful circle at work here, because when we first won the tender for Formula E, we drew heavily upon our road car technology. Unashamedly, that was our basis of our knowledge to integrate into this groundbreaking pack for Formula E. Because before then, the Formula E cars were limited to half race distance because the battery technology was limited. Our pack doubled the energy capacity, enabled the cars to run a full race distance, and we drew heavily upon our road car technology to do that. But the wonderful thing here is that we've learned so much through our tenure supplying to Formula E that we've now been able to use that knowledge that we've accrued through the racing program and put that back into our road car, and it's gone full circle. And this is a great example of racing improving the breed. So I want to thank you, Alejandro, for creating this series, because this is already benefiting road car technology.
But Alejandro, there's so much excitement about electric vehicles and Formula E, Extreme E. How can investors become involved in this evolution?
There is a big challenge. The industry is going through a tough time, and the big car manufacturers are deploying huge amounts of capital to prepare for the electric car revolution. But still, and we have to be honest with ourselves, people are not buying massively those electric cars. Why? Price and range anxiety. And those two things are huge challenges. Big companies like the Volkswagen Group, like many others, are really doing a huge bet on electric cars, but the business model, they're struggling to find the business model where they can make money out of those cells of electric cars. So we have a big challenge in front of us. It doesn't mean we have to give up. I think electric cars are the future. There are different technologies that can help store the energy. Battery, I believe, is going to be the future, but there are also other people that defend hydrogen, maybe a good option, etc. I think this change, this evolution and revolution to electric cars will happen no matter what, but it's not going to be an easy one. And for investors, you have to be careful on where you invest. I mean, our friends and colleagues of PIF, they're extremely clever investors, and they have invested in Lucid, in a battery-making company. I think a really good investment is Formula E. Our investors are really happy, and now Extreme E. But it's jokes apart. It's a tricky moment for the car industry in general, and this transition is not going to be easy.
And does public policy have a role to play in this?
Public policy has a very, very important role. And I mean, I'm not a real, I'm not too much on public intervention in the economy. I have a few prime ministers in front of us. Pierre Fillon himself is a great car expert and driver. But in this case, public policy is necessary. In this transition, in everything related to climate change and to the fight against city pollution, public policies are going to be very necessary.
And Peter, my last question to you would be, you're going to start season 6. So what's coming up next for Lucid Motors?
Well, we hope for a great season 6. We've actually just secured season 8. So that's sort of hot news. We've just recently done that. So we're delighted to support the sport through a prolonged tenure. I think that we can look for improvements, incremental improvements of our battery throughout that period to make the sport ever more exciting. And of course, I'm really excited because Lucid Air is going to launch in just over a year's time. And I really want to say thank you to the Public Investment Fund for making that a possibility. Thank you so much. And realizing this dream of bringing the very latest, the next generation electric car to the market, a car which I think will transform the industry and be welcome all around the world.
Alejandro, Peter, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Bonsoir.
Thank you. And now for our last speaker. It's hard to talk about the future of transportation without not mentioning this. I'd like to invite Mr. Jay Walder, CEO of Virgin Hyperloop One. Hey, Jay.
Thank you.
So Jay, can we learn a little bit more about the Hyperloop and maybe see a video or something about it?
Well, I think we're ready to show it. Do you want to give it?
Yes.
You want to do it? Go for it.
Let's do it.
Imagine traveling non-stop at up to 670 miles per hour, above land or underground. This is Hyperloop, a new mode of transportation that has been developed by Hyperloop One. It starts with an electric motor, which is broken up into 2 basic components, the rotor, which rotates, and the stator, which is stationary. The stator is an electromagnet, so when an electric current passes through it, the rotor is magnetically attracted to spin. Unlike a normal electric motor, the Hyperloop One motor isn't circular, it's linear. And the rotor is on the pod, which is propelled magnetically as it moves over the stator. Hyperloop One's unique technology uses magnetic levitation to guide and lift the pod off the track. Nearly all of the air inside the Hyperloop tube is removed using a series of vacuum pumps. This effectively creates our own sky inside the tube, as if you were quietly flying at 200,000 feet above sea level. This reduces drag so only the smallest amount of electricity is needed to achieve extraordinary speeds and creates a more cost and energy efficient system than high-speed rail or airline transport. Hyperloop One will be automated by the most advanced systems in the world, allowing a safe and efficient journey that's never delayed or overbooked. Hyperloop is the first new form of public transportation in over 100 years. Fundamentally, it will change the way we travel, work, and live. Welcome to the future. Welcome to Hyperloop One.
Jay, your personal background is really interesting. You've worked for a number of major transportation projects in London and Hong Kong and other cities. From your experience, why do you think this concept of the Hyperloop, the time is right for it today?
Well, look, running systems like that, London, Hong Kong, New York, you have unbelievable impact on cities. I mean, that's really what those systems are about. But let's also face it, the transportation paradigm that we are using today was developed 100 years ago. It's time. This is our opportunity to actually do something that is 21st century transportation. And how can we miss that? And the last point I'd make about it is, think about how important the word mobility has actually become in our life, right? It's moved from something, we didn't say that word, we didn't think about that word, but it's day-to-day affecting our lives, good or bad. So it's time.
But you've raised almost $370 million. You have over 200 plus engineers working for you. You're expanding your global partnerships. But can you let us know where exactly the technology stands today?
Well, the technology is real, and that's the good part about this. So in Las Vegas, just outside of Las Vegas, we've built a full-scale Hyperloop, 500 meters. We've run over 400 tests. We've reached a speed of just under 400 kilometers an hour, and that's just on that 500-meter track. So the technology is really real. You know, you mentioned two things. You mentioned people and you mentioned funding. And anyone who runs a young startup company has to know that those are the two key words. So we are really, really incredibly fortunate to have a team at Virgin Hyperloop One that is just incredible, and in particular our engineering team that has really been doing this, and also to have the funding partnerships. We have about 80 investors, but DP World, based in the UAE, is our majority funding partner and has just been terrific for us in being able to move this forward. So it's great. So it's here, it's now, it's ready to go. What are we seeing? We're seeing 19 states in the United States vying for Hyperloop right now. We have been designated to deliver a project in India, from Mumbai to Pune is the official project proponent of that. And we're working on a number of proposals right here in the Gulf, in the UAE, in Saudi. This is an exciting time.
What about, speaking of the Gulf and the Kingdom, it has obviously become an important market for you. You have been speaking about the connected Gulf. You know, what role does hyperspeeding technology and Hyperloop play in this notion of the connected Gulf, and how do you align it with Vision 2030?
Well, just let your imagination go for a second. So everything I'm going to say to you right now is city center to city center. Riyadh to Jeddah in 46 minutes. Riyadh to Qiddiya in 5 minutes. Jeddah to Neom in 40 minutes. And if we want to talk about connected Gulf, Riyadh to Abu Dhabi in 48 minutes. This is what we should be talking about. This is really what we should be talking about. How do we actually bring all of this together? And I think the Kingdom has a special role in this because it's such a large country in this space, and we're looking for the connectivity in being able to think about that. The goals that were laid out in Vision 2030 are clear. They're about bold leadership. They're about game-changing events in doing this. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the most advanced mass transportation system in the world. We're talking about a system that is environmentally friendly, 10 times more efficient than airplanes. We're talking about shared transportation in a way that we should really have it and want it. That's all about the things that are there. And those are the values, those are the things that will reshape cities and give us the things that we're looking for.
Well, as someone who's been stuck in traffic one too many times, that sounds very exciting.
We might need it right outside this hotel.
Well, you have partnered with King Abdullah Economic City to explore the creation of a center of excellence. And one of the things that includes is a manufacturing component. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, look, there are really, I think, 4 key platforms to Hyperloop. It's about passenger transportation, it's about freight transportation, it's about technology development in which we're doing it, and it's about industrial partnership, right? And the 4th one, I think, is really where this goes. Today, there is no place in the world that Hyperloop is being manufactured. The opportunity is in front of us to create the first manufacturing facilities anywhere in the world to be able to do this. We looked with the Economic Cities Authority about what the opportunity space could be to do that. And here's the results. If we were to create an advanced R&D and manufacturing facility, we could be looking at 124,000 jobs by 2030. We could be looking at $5 billion of non-oil, high-technology export products for the Kingdom by 2030. We could be looking at an increase in GDP of $4 billion. So this is, again, perfectly aligned with Vision 2030, with the message that says, let's develop new technology, let's make it happen here, and let's, for the purposes of the Kingdom, but also to be able to look outward as well.
That's amazing. Beyond mobility, including R&D, export-led growth, and of course, talent development. Thank you, Jay, for your insights.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Jay. So before we move on to our last session today, let's take a quick look at the past 3 days.